Welcome to Discovery Watch with John Kaiser.
I'm your host, Jim Goddard. Welcome back to the show, John.
Jim, it's a pleasure to be back.
John, did New Legacy ever get a plan of operations permit for its Rift anticline play in Nevada?
Jim, they finally got it in late September, and they started a drill program this week after waiting a year to get the plan of operations. Now, just to give some background on this story, because this is a potentially very significant story, New Legacy got involved in this part of Nevada back in 2010, and they raised and spent over $20 million over the subsequent 7 years in the on the Red Hill project, which is southeast of the Gold Rush deposit that Barrick, on which Barrick is now doing a feasibility study. And but the Serena and the Iceberg and all these things that they came up with, they just didn't have the continuity and the grade to be a mineable deposit. And in 2018, Albert Matter decided to turn New Legacy into some sort of refugee camp for former Barrick employees. He attracted all the stars that had retired from Barrick, ones who had worked on the Gold Rush project, people like Ed Cope, Mark Bradley, Charles Weekly, and a host of others. And they went to work on $20 million worth of data, recrunched it, put all their experience that they had gained at Gold Rush and the other projects in the Cortez Hills area to work to figure out what was going on. And the conclusion was both surprising and depressing for Albert Matter. It turns out that the area to the west of the property, which has been paved over by much younger volcanic rocks that are completely barren and where nobody has ever seen reason to drill a hole, that was where the potential for Gold Rush 2 lay. Now, Gold Rush 1 is a 5-kilometer long cigar-shaped body that sits within the fold hinge of an anticline, which is basically stratigraphy that has been folded. And in Nevada, we have this wonderful sequence of upper plate and lower plate rocks, and the upper plate rocks are the same age as the lower plate rocks, but they formed farther out to sea, whereas the lower plate carbonate rocks, the limestones in that, were closer into shore. About 150, 80 million years ago, the thrusting pushed these upper plate rocks over top of these lower plate carbonate rocks. And so although they're the same age, they are sitting one beneath the other. And then, of course, Nevada is a geologic, tectonically very complex area. There's been plenty of folding. And what happens is that when this stratigraphy gets folded, the siltstones that make up the upper plate rocks, they're much bendier than the limestones, which are quite brittle. So the upper part of the fold, it bends, while the carbonates get all broken up, crackle up, and then sit there beneath it. And what the Barrick guys had learned with all the work that they did at Gold Rush and the other Cortez project deposits was that the Carlin fluids appeared to be traveling from east to west along fairly shallow faults, low-angle faults. And it's where they encounter a high-angle fault, a vertical fault, that the fluids get channeled upwards. And if they happen to hit something like the hinge of an anticline, where you have the tighter siltstone upper plate rocks up top and the busted up carbonates beneath, then the fluid bleeds sideways into the carbonate rocks and form these fantastic high-grade Carlin-type deposits. And what they concluded at the Red Hill project was that in the Iceberg area, the fluids had traveled eastward into this area, but the best horizon for soaking up the gold are the Wenban 5 formation, which is part of the lower plate stratigraphy. It wasn't as substantial there, and what was really happening there was kind of a leftover exhaust from the fluids that came from the east and ended up being channeled upwards and created deposits underneath this younger, barren rock. Now, the problem that Albert encountered in 2019 when he wanted to drill this target area, the Rift Anticline, was he had already taken out so many 5-acre disturbance permits in that area, and absolutely none of them had been in this Rift Anticline area, of course, because it's just garbage rock. Why would you drill a rock there? And so the BLM said, well, you need to apply for a plan of operations. So for over $500,000 U.S. invested in this whole process, which was kicked off last year, they finally got that plan of operations in September, and they've now started a 5 to 6 hole program, part of a 16-hole program. They hope to get these 6 holes done. They're going to be deep holes, 800 meters deep, $250,000 U.S. each. And the rest of the 16-hole program, well, that will resume in the second quarter of next year. Now, this is a very high-stakes, interesting prospect because the target has been generated completely through peripheral data, like analyzing all the stratigraphy to the east and then using CSAMT data. It's a type of geophysical data, very complex. They were able to model structurally and stratigraphically, graphically, what was going on under this Rift Anticline. And it's also about a 4.5 kilometer structure, completely blind. And the guys, Mark Bradley's team, they won the Thayer Lindsley Award that PDAC puts out for great discoveries a number of years ago. If Gold Rush 2, or if the Rift Anticline turns into Gold Rush 2, this will be a phenomenal exercise in geological sleuthing. Yes, they did use geophysical data, but it's not like it's a bullseye mag anomaly under cover rock, such as you do in Australia, and you bang these, and when eventually you get lucky and find a Cannington-type deposit. No, this will have been a very sophisticated exercise in geological detective work. To make sure it had enough money, Albert Matter did a 75 million unit financing at 7.5 cents in May. That's now free trading. It has pushed fully diluted up to 611 million. I've modeled what the Gold Rush 1 would be worth at the 3,300 ton per day underground scenario that for which Barrick's now doing a feasibility study. Over a 20-year mine life, this would produce about $7.7 billion at today's gold price. That would have an NPV of about 2.6 billion Canadian. So the size of this prize for New Legacy, which is trading, between 15 and 20 cents, would be a $4 target. And that's not a big fancy number like, say, 15, 20 bucks for a Great Bear with a lot less stock outstanding. But in terms of the value, you have to think in terms of value. A 15-cent stock eventually moving to $4, that would be an extraordinary score. So a lot of eyes are now watching to see if the Rift Anticline is going to deliver a Gold Rush 2 clone. And of course, you can always dream that it might even be better than Gold Rush 1. So we'll find out probably early in January what the assays run. You can never quite tell with this Carlin material because the gold is micron sized. You can see all the other types of the arsenic, the orpiment, and the realgar. You can see that in there if it's present. But the most important thing we'll be watching for is confirmation that the structural model that the Barrick guys developed is in fact reliable, and that all you need to do now is find where the Carlin type gold mineralization piled up within these Wenban 5 formation traps.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Aben Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Aben's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at abenresources.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, back in June, when there was still a lot of excitement about Azimut's Elmer discovery in the James Bay region, you introduced Dios exploration as the next best area play discovery bet. Where do Dios and its K2 project stand today?
Well, since then, Dios has raised $2 million in 2 rounds of financing. The last one that was helped out with by Palisades Gold Corp. That one was 9 million units at 12 cents with a full 3-year warrant at 20 cents. That comes free trading in January, so we don't have to worry about that. The other financing was done more locally with insiders and Quebec Inc. types. That had no warrant attached to it. That raised also $1 million. Now, the K2 project, it sits to the southwest of Azimut's Elmer project, where it was a lot of excitement earlier this year when the Patwan zone delivered excellent gold intersections for the dilation zones outlined by this sort of 100-meter by 200-meter outcrop, which they drilled late last year. But since then, the market's enthusiasm for the Elmer project has diminished considerably. The optimism was based on this idea that there's a 7-kilometer shear structure at Elmer, within which Patwan was one of what we hope to be multiple dilation zones, and the key was going to be the high degree of sulfides associated with the gold mineralization in the Patwan zone. And for that, an IP survey revealed, yes, there's a chargeability high associated with this zone, and lo and behold, there are multiple other such chargeability highs within this at least a 3 to 4 kilometer portion of the 7-kilometer shear structure for which they did IP surveys. And Azimut has drilled 61 holes. There are still, since late last year, there are still about, I think, 15 holes pending. But all the IP targets that they drilled, there's been nothing reportable in terms of gold intersections, and it now appears to be that the presence of gold in the Patwan zone, which itself has not shown itself to be much longer than 400 meters. In fact, the grade starts to fade as soon as you get beyond the 200-meter strike of the outcrop and start getting more into the swampy area. The sulfides there seem to have been just a coincidence. So right now the market's waiting for some news story from Jean-Marc Louan about where these dilation zones are likely to be hidden within this 7-kilometer shear structure. What's his approach going to be going forward to see how many more of these are? And it's very unlikely that we just have this smallish, up to 80 meters wide, 400-meter long zone all by itself. Now the Dios play K2, that sits on the west side of the Cayley intrusion. It's a pluton that sort of straddles both the Elmer property and the K2. That K2 property, although it's had sampling work done in the southern part by Westman decades ago in what they call the Attila zone, it has never seen a drill hole. Whereas the Elmer property itself, not on the Patwan prospect itself, but in the northern part has seen lots of holes in the past which never really produced anything that hung together. But when the Elmore play was running earlier this year and people said, here's something different for the James Bay region, we're seeing these orogenic gold systems emerge, very good grades, there's a structural context that makes sense. And that's when the market became interested in Dios. And we talked about it back in, I think, May or June to introduce it as a Discovery Watch candidate, because if there was any likely place where there was going to be more of what Azimut was coming up with at Elmer, it would be to the southwest on the WI target that had emerged from reprocessing of MAG-EM data that Dios was able to get hold of after it staked these claims when they came open in 2016. And they had, most of their attention has been in the Attila area, which has gold and copper showings that are, have never been drilled. But this area to the west of the Pluton is all overburden covered, and there's drumlins covering it. But they did send a crew out a couple of years ago, and they did manage to find some gold mineralized boulders and even some outcrop. And when they reprocessed the data, they were able to see that there's a 4-kilometer long mag low to the south of which was what they called an apparent, an airborne apparent induced polarization anomaly. It's not quite the same thing as what's generated by an IP survey. So with the first batch of money, they went in there and did an IP survey in June, July, and what this revealed was about a half dozen sort of roughly east-west oriented, quite weak chargeability anomalies. And that makes sense because within the boulders and the outcrop, the sulfides are only 1 to 2% pyrite. So you're not expecting to get a chargeability high such as you get at the Patwan prospect where there are more sulfides. But from what we've learned, it may just be coincidence that there was a lot of sulfides in the Patwan system. The big story is still whether there's some hidden structural break in this area that is feeding these orogenic fluids up into the system. You just got to find the right place where these fluids end up falling out and forming high-grade gold deposits. So they started a 2,200-meter drill program, 10 to 12 holes. It started this weekend, and about 10 holes will be focused on these half dozen weak chargeability anomalies in this area where they already have the evidence of gold mineralization. In a sense, it's somewhat similar to what the Golden Goliath is doing at its Kwai project, where the key structure is the Packwash fault, which seems to be linked to a deeper crustal scale fault that feeds the LP fault of Great Bear and ultimately the Red Lake Camp. In the case of Golden Goliath, they are also chasing a number of parallel east-west trending IP anomalies. They've already got 7 holes into that system. They're working on the 8th. They've picked up sulfides that explain the IP anomalies. They've picked up interesting geology. But in terms of bedrock context, the best that they really have are some pristine gold grains that they picked up in basal till samples. So that play is still waiting assay confirmation that that particular Packwash fault was fertile with gold mineralization and that the stuff that they're intersecting now runs a decent amount of gold. They figure a couple of weeks more for that. In the case of Dios, they've just started now. We'll be lucky if we get any assays before the end of the year, but definitely by January. But given that this area has never been drilled, did not really end up on the radar until azimuth showed that the Patwan zone had very interesting gold mineralization within a structural context that made sense. This is a play to watch very carefully. The market's assuming it's going to be a bust. There's about 115 million shares fully diluted, and the stock's trading at 9-10 cents. So this drill program will tell us whether or not perhaps the center of gravity that we thought was in the Patwan area on the Elmer property is perhaps west of the Kalai Pluton on the K2 ground, where this little junior with only $10 million market valuation right now has a drill program underway, and we should definitely keep our eye on it as a Discovery Watch candidate to see if indeed this area of James Bay is something that's going to ultimately deliver significant orogenic gold deposits that can be profitably mined.
Discovery Watch will be right back after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Value from success. Growth in discovery. Golden Arrow Resources is a well-funded gold-copper exploration company with proven management and prospective properties in Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. Golden Arrow trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange, symbol GRG, on Frankfurt, symbol G6A, and the OTCQB, symbol GARWF. For more information, visit us at goldenarrowresources.com or call Sean at 778-686-0135.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, are there any other obscure, potentially high-impact drill programs Discovery Watch should be monitoring?
Well, Jim, I'd like to introduce a very unusual company called Yorbo Resources that's been around for decades without a rollback, which is why it has 350 million shares issued. It's one of my favorites from my 2020 edition. I picked it around 2.5, 3 cents. It's been as high as 8 cents this year. But the main reason that I made it a favorite was that this company has a number of projects which are being discounted completely by the market because the focus is on what the market expects to be a buyout by IM Gold on the Rouen project. The company several years ago did what I think is a pretty bad deal where they farmed out 100% of the Rouen project, which straddles about 12 kilometers of the Larder Lake Cadillac Break, just south of Rouen-Noranda. And they optioned it to IM Gold on terms where they have to pay about $3 million in payments over 4 years and spend $9 million and produce a 43-101 resource estimate on the basis of which they'll pay Yorbo $15 an ounce in the ground, capped at 2 million ounces, or in other words, $30 million Canadian. And so far, the guidance that IM Gold has shown is that they expect that this Lac Gamble area, where they're doing all their work right now, will deliver 400,000 to 600,000 ounces. Most of the work they're doing now is geared towards infill drilling because they need more mill feed for their Doyon mill, which is about 40 kilometers to the east. Their Westwood mine just can't deliver enough ore for that facility. So they would truck ore from the Rouen project eastwards and feed that mill, which is why this deal makes sense, but they're also not in any apparent hurry to speed this along. But in terms of a buyout, minimum $15 million payment, maximum $30 million payment, and the speculation has been that IM Gold might do a preemptive friendly offer, maybe for 10 cents. So it hasn't been, one of my exciting picks, but there was always the hope that they might get something going on their other projects. They finally are getting something going on one of them, which was the last one that I expected anything to be done. They have the Scott VMS project, which is a zinc copper deposit with no significant gold credit. That was what Cogitor spent all its money, most of its money on during the prior decade when Ned Goodman was funding the company. Cogitor's Quebec assets were folded into Yorbo a few years ago for, mere 25 million shares. And one of the ones in there was the Lemoyne deposit. And it sits on the southern flank of the Chibougamau area within a VMS horizon stratigraphy that used to be flat-lying and draped over the Chibougamau Pluton. But when that came up, it of course bowed it all up, and the stratigraphy to the north was tilted downwards towards the north, and to the south it was tilted southwards. And so what you really have on the edge there is a 70-80 degree dipping stratigraphic package that runs for about 17 kilometers. And back in 1973, the Lemoyne deposit was discovered by a Quebec company called Patino Mines. It was only 750,000 tons, but it was very rich rich mineralization. At one point, it was ranked as the second richest VMS deposit after SK Creek's 21B zone. And the key was a gold enrichment of 4 grams per ton. And of course, since these VMS deposits occur in clusters, there's always been hope that the Lemoyne project would yield additional deposits. And the deposit itself, which is steeply dipping, goes down about 400 or 500 meters. It's been Swiss cheesed all around there. There's nothing there. It looks like most of the deposit actually stuck up into the sky and has long ago been eroded away. And they've done lots of drilling down to about 400 meter depth along the 17 kilometer strike, testing every imaginable conductor that they could come up with, and there's just nothing there. So it's this isolated, smallish, very rich, gold-enriched VMS deposit that nobody else has been able to find more of. But this week, they've started a drill program on a geophysical target that has been developed at an 800-meter depth. And when you look at the plan section of all the holes, you can see that here's a hole where an area where the holes that got close hit some sort of, narrow VMS mineralization, but where the conductor is present, there's no holes in there. So now they're started a 2-hole program. The first one will be about testing this at about sort of 1,000 meter depth. They want to make sure that they follow this down dip because obviously this conductor does not exist up dip where there are holes. And the hope is that there might be a deposit that's 2 to 3 times bigger than the original Lemoyne that goes down deep. And these deposits, like for example, Laurent goes down to 3,000 meters, and that's a gold-enriched VMS system on the Larder Lake Cadillac break. And if this drill program, which will probably take a couple weeks to reach target depth, delivers massive sulfide mineralization with the zinc copper, normal zinc copper values, plus a gold enrichment, this would be a significant development for this company, which is something of a market orphan. It's cheap right now because a shareholder who had accumulated 30 million plus shares a number of years ago and was part of management got ousted earlier this year, and this appears to be an overhang coming into the market right now. And for my subscribers, I've likened this. Well, this is kind of like a convertible bond, which if this Lemoyne target hits, not only can they chase this thing down depth, but all of a sudden, everywhere along strike, beneath 400-meter depth, becomes fair game again for exploration for similar high-grade VMS deposits. So this one drill hole, and possibly the second parallel target that they also hope to drill before Christmas, that could completely change the fortune of this company and take it from this sort of moribund company waiting for a friendly bid from IAMGOLD to take them out to 10 cents to all of a sudden becoming a high-flying stock. And, a lot of stock out, $350 million. It's similar to New Legacy, which we talked about earlier today. It would be the value of the company that would be the upside potential of this story. So Yorbo's Lemoyne project, it could be over very quickly, but it's worthwhile for our Discovery Watch audience to monitor this. And when they hit, it's not going to be obvious that it's a success. You'll see some activity in the market. There will be opportunity to accumulate it. The gold grade won't be known until the assays are actually in. And with the 6 to 8 week turnaround time, well, again, this could also be late December or early January before we know the nature of this VMS system, if such a system is intersected by this hole.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been talking with John Kaiser, his website, kaiserresearch.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on Discovery Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at HowStreet.com. Discovery Watch is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.